My name is Yami, and today marks my 17th birthday, coinciding with the first day of summer vacation. On this day, it was discovered that I was mistakenly switched at birth with another child from the Duncan family. Facing the girl who looks more like my parents, I felt a sense of guilt for the first time. It was I who had unknowingly taken her affluent life as a wealthy heiress. Yet, she pointed to her canvas shoes adorned with flowers, smiling as she said, "Look. My mom and I painted these together. I wouldn't trade them for 10 billion. My parents' love story is like a romance novel come to life. My mother being from a distinguished family and my father a striving poor boy. When they first got married, my mother's family didn't accept such a son-in-law, prompting my mother in a fit of anger to leave home with my father. According to them, our family faced financial difficulties until I was about 2 years old, as my father's company was just starting. However, fortune turned, and he landed several substantial contracts, which improved our circumstances. By the time I was 7 or 8 and began to remember, we were already quite prosperous. My father's hard work and talent gradually won over my grandparents, who accepted him, leading to reconciliation and a smoother life thereafter. With the support from my mother's family, my father's business thrived, and I officially became known as the precious daughter. I thought this life would continue forever until today, when they told me I was not their biological daughter. In fact, there had been signs. Around the age of 5 or 6, people often remarked that I didn't resemble my parents. My mother is a tall, striking beauty, and my father handsome and dignified. Although not unattractive, I indeed bore little resemblance to them, except for my small nose, which was quite like my grandmother's. Perhaps because of this, whenever people mentioned that I didn't look like my parents, my mother would gently respond, "It skipped a generation, she resembles her grandmother." I assumed it was a genetic anomaly, and so did my parents initially, until one day, they coincidentally saw a girl in a high school uniform who resembled them strikingly as students were being dismissed from a local high school. This sparked their suspicion. They investigated the girl's identity, and her name was Diana. We were born on the exact same day, month, and year, and even more coincidentally at the same hospital, which made the idea of a mix-up more apparent. They managed to contact Diana's parents, and finding that Diana resembled my adoptive parents, both families agreed to conduct a DNA test in secret from us children. If it turned out to be a mere coincidence, they would let it go. If it confirmed a mix-up at birth, they would then discuss what to do next. Now the results are clear. There was indeed a mix-up. This could probably count as the most unusual birthday party of my life. Amid awkwardness and silence, I blew out the candles and ate the cake, hardly aware of how time passed. The next day, my parents took me to meet my biological parents and Diana in a hotel suite in the city. Diana looked very much like my adoptive parents, with her striking, elegant features. Her hair neatly tied back in a ponytail, tall and slender, wearing a white floral t-shirt and blue jeans. Her face showing the same bewildered expression as mine. The room was arranged with 2 tables, each of us sitting across from our biological parents. Looking at the couple before me, I knew instantly they were my birth parents. They say a daughter often resembles her father, and aside from our eyes and nose, I looked just like the man in front of me. My eyes were identical to my birth mother's, double-lidded and almond-shaped. As for the nose, it was a curious coincidence that my birth mother also had a small, elegant nose. In contrast to my well-groomed adoptive parents, exuding sophistication, my birth parents looked more like typical middle-aged people, with hints of white at the temples and faces marked by the trials of life. Wearing simple but neat clothing, we looked at each other, tears welling in their eyes as they gazed at their long-lost daughter, wanting to reach out but hesitating. Overwhelmed by a mix of confusion and embarrassment, and I too felt awkward, the undeniable bond of blood giving me a sense of closeness. To me, they were certainly strangers. Despite not having seen them for 17 years, I didn't know what expression to wear, so I just squeezed out a polite smile and answered their questions about whether I was living well, what I liked to eat, and what my hobbies were. I was somewhat distracted, my gaze sneaking peeks at the table behind me. I wanted to see how the couple who had raised me for 17 years, whom I had called Mom and Dad, were doing. I wondered if they had pushed me to the back of their minds after meeting their biological daughter. Just then, I caught Diana, or rather, Diana Duncan's expression. Her smile was even more strained than mine, and she didn't know where to place her hands. Perhaps she, too, wanted to see how her parents of 17 years were doing, seeking some comfort from the people closest to her. Our eyes met across the distance. Diana looked at me, taken aback for a moment, then smiled awkwardly. At the dinner table, the adults from both families began discussing the specifics of switching us back, identity issues, legal documents needed, and various certifications. I didn't fully understand and sat blankly, staring at the soup in my bowl, feeling a sourness in my nose, but without a reason to cry. I felt as though I didn't have the right to. The atmosphere in the room was suffocating. Only relieved by the parents' back-and-forth discussion, a waiter came in to change the plates, and when I handed mine over, I saw Diana looking at me. She mouthed quietly to me, "Shall we go outside?" and then pointed to the door. I sneakily glanced at the adults. They hadn't noticed us, so I nodded at Diana. We both excused ourselves to go to the restroom, slipped from our seats, and walked through the opulent hotel corridor, past the chandelier-lit lobby, and finally outside to the hotel's fountain. The summer evening breeze, carrying the scent of plants in a cool temperature, finally made me feel a bit better. I walked to a small shop by the roadside outside the hotel and bought 2 ice pops, bringing them back. Diana and I each took one. She thanked me, and we sat side by the fountain, licking our ice pops and watching the bustling traffic. For a while, neither of us spoke, perhaps because neither could find a topic. With only the sound of cicadas in our ears, even at night, the midsummer temperature was high, and my ice pop quickly melted away. I chewed on the leftover stick, tasting the sugary flavor, and finally broke the silence. "Do you hate me? Why would I hate you?" She looked at me, puzzled. "I took your parents and your life. The life with the Duncan family was supposed to be yours," I said softly. "She was the real daughter of the Duncan family. The villa I lived in, the luxury cars I rode in, the designer clothes, all the glamorous life should have been hers. By that logic, I took your parents too," she said, taking the stick from my hand and tossing it into a nearby trash can before sitting back down, pointing at her shoes. "See these shoes?" I looked at her shoes, simple canvas sneakers painted with bright acrylic colors, well cared for and clean. These were my 16th birthday present, cost about $80. They were plain white originally, and I chose them myself online. The designs were painted by my mom and me together. "You couldn't pay me $100 billion to part with them." Her words carried genuine joy, even a hint of pride. "Do your parents treat you well?" she suddenly asked. "You mean your parents?" Yeah, my parents." She hesitated for a moment when she spoke about my parents. "They are great. They're busy making a living outside, but they've never missed a parent-teacher meeting, and they always prepare gifts for my birthday every year. They know I don't like onions and always instruct the housekeeper to avoid using them in dishes. They know I like the color green, so whenever they buy me something, they choose green first. I tend to lose interest quickly. I gave up ballet, flower arranging, and horse riding after just 3 days. But they've never criticized me. I couldn't help but ask her in return, "And your parents, do they treat you well?" "Of course, they do." She leaned back, supporting herself with her hands and naturally stretching out her long, straight legs, just like her biological mother. "My dad, no, your dad, is very busy with work. He often works overtime on weekends. But he's up every day at 6 to prepare breakfast and lunch because he worries I might skip breakfast otherwise. Your mom loves reading novels and has a very modern mindset. When I was in middle school and liked comics, she never criticized me for being distracted. Instead, she would neatly arrange the comics I bought in chronological order in the bookshelf. In my first year of high school, she promised to buy me a Switch gaming console if I scored 120 on my English final exam. Now we share an account. And she even bragged to me last time about the huge garden she created in the game. She opened up and chattered nonstop about her everyday interactions with her parents, filled with ordinary yet warm stories. Just listening to them felt comforting and beautiful. After talking for a while, she seemed a bit embarrassed and touched her nose to stop herself. "Do you want to switch?" she asked me. "No," I replied firmly and softly. "Me neither." Diana leaned forward, resting her chin on her hands and watching cars pass by on the street as the evening grew darker and the streetlights lit up one by one, reflecting in her beautiful eyes. "I'm just a bit upset," she said softly, sighing. "It's not our fault we were switched at birth. We were still in our incubators. What could we know? Switching children is a huge deal for us, so why has no one asked for our opinion?" Indeed, Why has no one asked for our opinion even now? We talked a lot more. I learned that she loves reading, watching movies, and enjoys all things imaginative. She has won several awards in youth literary competitions and dreams of being a freelance writer or working as an editor for a publishing house. However, she struggles with science, especially math and physics, and has always been tone deaf. In elementary school, she was never chosen for the choir. Listening to her was extremely interesting. My foster father gets headaches from reading anything more substantial than a newspaper, while my foster mother has a remarkable talent for music and even conducted a choir. I saw in her a kind of unbridled freedom and vitality, lively like a bird in the woods. Then I also shared my life with her. My grades are quite good across all subjects, with biology being my best. I want to study botany abroad in the future. I take care of our home garden, planting many white roses of different varieties. Like Iceberg and Gabriel Palero, I've been playing the piano since childhood and even held a small solo concert in middle school. I love the flowing sound of the piano. As I spoke, she suddenly burst into laughter. I asked her what was funny, and she waved her hand, telling me that my biological father is completely tone deaf, and my mother has a black thumb for gardening. She's managed to kill every plant in the house, even cacti, so I too started laughing. And I shared stories about her own parents. We both laughed so hard we couldn't straighten our backs, not even knowing what was so funny, but just enjoying the moment. She told me I perfectly fit her image of a well-bred young lady from a distinguished family. I asked her what she imagined it to be like, and she counted off on her fingers as she described it to me: elegant demeanor, appropriate speech, gentle personality, talented and versatile. Her compliments made me blush. And I humbly objected, saying I was not that good, but she looked at me sincerely and insisted it was true. When you talk and eat, you always keep your back straight, which looks really elegant, just like my own mother. My foster mother was a genuine lady of grace, always beautiful in her speech and movements, and she raised me to carry myself with pride, to stand tall and keep my head up. From a young age, she corrected my posture and even hired a teacher to guide me. Yummy. You don't want to switch, do you? Friendships among young people develop quickly. In just half an hour, we were already calling each other Yummy and Diana. She asked me again, her eyes pleading for confirmation, and I answered her seriously once more. I don't want to switch, she sighed in relief, smiling as she stood up to take my hand. Then let's go tell them that. Let's say we don't want to switch. We won't switch, okay? I took her hand and stood up. We won't switch. As we returned to the private room holding hands, I suddenly felt a bit intimidated as we entered. My foster parents had painstakingly found their biological daughter. Would it seem selfish if I refused? However, Diana boldly conveyed our wishes. After hearing her, my foster parents looked at me. Yummy, do you feel the same way? Holding Diana's hand, her fingers long and warm, gave me courage. I nodded. I feel the same way. After considering our feelings, it was decided. Since both children were on summer vacation, we could try swapping lives for 2 months. If after that time, we still didn't want to switch, then we would just leave things as they were. Having lived together for 17 years, even if not by blood, we had formed bonds. I could tell that my biological parents didn't really want to switch either. When they heard that we might just leave the mistake uncorrected, they seemed a bit regretful but mostly relieved, looking at Diana with immense affection. And I couldn't bear to look at my foster parents, unsure if they felt the same. I was afraid of facing the truth. The swap would start the next day, giving me one night to pack my bags. As I looked around my room of 10 years, everything felt both familiar and surreal. This was my safe haven, my place of peace, yet it was never truly mine. I sat at my desk, zoning out for a moment before pulling out a stack of sticky notes and beginning to write down notes. Diana might be unfamiliar with the strange environment, so I decided to label what was in every cabinet and drawer. My foster parents were often not at home, and if she felt too shy to ask the housekeeper where things were, these notes should help her. Clothes for all seasons in the wardrobe, hygiene products in the bathroom cabinet, stationery in the drawers. I wrote as detailed as I could. When I placed the last note, I looked around my now foreign room. The next morning, my biological parents drove Diana over, and my foster parents stood outside to greet her. As she stepped out of the car, carrying a small suitcase, and saw me also holding a modest suitcase. We smiled at each other, understanding each other's intentions without a word. It was just 2 months of exchanged lives, with neither of us truly planning to switch back. My foster parents walked me to the door, and I got into the small car of my biological parents. Before leaving, my mother held my hand tighter than ever before, and I gently squeezed back before she let go. Once you're there, eat well. That was the last piece of advice I heard from my mother. I arrived at the place where Diana had lived for 17 years, a small house. The layout of the two-bedroom apartment was warm and cozy, with her room in the master bedroom, exuding a homely warmth throughout. My biological parents were very kind to me. To celebrate my arrival, they cooked an entire meal themselves. And I had almost forgotten what it was like to eat a meal prepared by my parents. The dishes weren't fancy, but they were prepared with care and refinement, and they even made sure not to include onions, which I dislike. The meal was eaten in silence. I didn't know what to say, occasionally thanking my mother as she served me more food, followed by unbearable stretches of quiet. After lunch, my biological parents cleaned up the dishes. Feeling that I should help, I went to the kitchen, which was narrow with neatly arranged bottles of spices on the counter. It was clear they enjoyed cooking. Seeing me enter, they quickly ushered me out of the kitchen, telling me to just sit and relax. I sat uneasily on the living room sofa, waiting until they finished cleaning up and joined me. "Yami, would you like to talk with us?" they asked. I was surprised and nodded. I'm not very good at heart-to-heart conversations. Both classmates and teachers have said I'm like a closed clam, always quiet, like a serene porcelain doll. My biological parents earnestly shared their thoughts with me. They admitted that switching babies was their mistake, but for them, Diana was still the daughter they had cherished for 17 years, and those feelings couldn't be erased. I was their biological daughter, and they expressed a strong desire to make up for the lost time and affection between us if I wanted. However, they were also aware that their family wasn't as wealthy as the Duncan family. They promised to give me the best they could in terms of financial and social resources, but they acknowledged it wouldn't compare to what the Duncans could offer. Over these 17 years, I must have also developed a deep bond with my adoptive parents. Isn't it rare for children not to love their parents? They asked. I found this perspective novel. People often say there's no parent who doesn't love their child, but seldom the other way around. This sentiment struck a chord with me. My adoptive mother was a reserved person, but I still remember her reading me many storybooks as a child. My adoptive father was busy with work, but he always kissed my forehead when he came home. In the end, my adoptive parents told me that it was okay if I couldn't decide now. They would always respect my choice. I was somewhat bewildered and didn't know how to respond. I opened my mouth but couldn't speak, only managing to say, "Please give me some time to think." They nodded and escorted me back to Diana's room to rest. The room was decorated with many bird toys and models, reflecting Diana's interests. A large bookcase filled one wall, containing a variety of books: science fiction, mystery, comics, classical literature, almost every genre imaginable. The wardrobe in the room was small, crammed with all her clothes. The bed wasn't large but was clean and tidy, with freshly changed sheets and covers emitting a soft scent of fabric softener. On the bedside table, there was a plush teddy bear with a note from Diana next to it. "This teddy bear has been on my bed since I was 5 years old. I hope it can also guard your dreams." At midnight, lying in bed, I received a message from Diana. We had exchanged contact information earlier. Her ID was DDD, and her avatar was a plush little bird. DDD text: "Help, your brother is back." DDD text: "He wants to have a long talk with me, and it's so awkward." Her messages made me laugh as I typed a response while lying on my bed. Yami text: "That's your real brother." Her reply came quickly. DDD text: "I haven't seen him in 17 years. He's just a strange adult male to me." DDD text: "Help, please, save me." She sent me 3 crying emojis in a row. I have an older brother named Lucas who has been studying abroad. When he heard about the big news, he hurriedly bought a ticket and flew back, seeing Diana's call for help. I thought about it and decided to give Lucas a call. The phone rang 3 times before connecting. There was no response from the other side, just the sound of breathing. I spoke softly. "Can I still call you brother?" "Yes, of course." Lucas's voice came through the phone, urgent. "He is 4 years older than me. My birth was an accident. Contraceptives aren't 100% effective, and our foster mother, finding herself pregnant again, couldn't bear to terminate the pregnancy. Neither could our foster father, so despite not being wealthy, they gritted their teeth and paid the fine to keep me. I was born into a family filled with hope and love, but that affection was meant for Yami, not for me. Lucas and I had a typical sibling relationship. We lived together, argued, and even had cold wars, but to me, he was always a respected older brother, always the first to stand up for me when I was bullied. Lucas told me he had met Diana, and she looked very much like him. Did you talk? No, we just stared at each other for a long time, not knowing what to say. She's your biological sister, Yami. We haven't seen each other in 17 years. It's no different from being strangers. I remembered the messages Diana had sent me. I thought about how similar the two of them were and pursed my lips to keep from laughing. We chatted casually about things like his life and studies abroad and how I had been doing at home lately. Just ordinary, everyday stuff. As time passed and before we hung up, he said, "Remember to come home." I wasn't sure how to respond emotionally, so I just replied, "Okay." Maybe it was because of the new environment, but it took me a long time to fall asleep in bed. The next day, I woke up an hour later than usual. My parents had already gone to work, and there was a prepared breakfast on the dining table. As I was eating, Diana called me. "Yami, are you at home?" I swallowed my food before responding, "Yes, what's up? I forgot to bring my notebook. Can I come over to get it now?" "Of course, you can tell your aunt, and have Uncle Lee drive you over." Uncle Lee was our family driver. "No need, there's a bus stop right outside the complex. I'll just catch a bus and be there soon, so just wait for me a bit." I spent over an hour looking through a rose guidebook I brought with me, and then I heard a knock on the door. The walls of the old apartment were thin, and the sound insulation wasn't great. I could hear Diana's slightly off-tune singing from outside. "Little bunny, open up." I walked over to open the door. "Here I am. Didn't you bring your house keys?" "I did, but you're the one living here now." She changed her shoes at the shoe cabinet by the door, wearing a light summer sweatshirt and shorts that she must have brought with her. "Didn't you wear the clothes from the wardrobe? You're a bit taller than me, and there's a cabinet with loose-fitting clothes marked in the dressing room. You can wear those." I paused, worried whether she might be reluctant to wear someone else's clothes. "They're all new. I haven't worn it before." "No need. I still prefer my own clothes." She waved her hand, rummaged through her room for a while, and pulled out a notebook with a colorful cover. "Do you have any plans today?" Diana asked me. "I plan to do my homework. How about we do it together?" "Sure." Doing homework with a friend was a novel experience for me. Usually, when I got home, the tutor my foster parents hired was already waiting. I would complete my homework under their guidance along with additional exercises they provided, followed by a summary of mistakes and preview of various subjects. But now, sitting face to face at a small table, the sun shining through the window warming the room, with the air conditioner humming quietly in the background, I did my worksheets and she wrote her essay. Just by looking up, I could see each other. The room was very quiet, a setting I was accustomed to, but today's silence was different, calm and peaceful, relaxing. After finishing a math worksheet, I sneakily glanced at Diana across the table. She wrote quickly, her words flowing from her pen like music, composing language as poetic as her thoughts and emotions, as natural as breathing. Time ticked by, and soon it was noon. Diana invited me to join her for lunch, mentioning a street stall downstairs that made exceptional small wontons. We walked through the city's narrow alleys, with the scent of food wafting above us, finding a hidden street lined with tiny eateries bustling with diners at this mealtime. We found a low table and sat down. Diana expertly ordered 2 bowls of wontons and a plate of scallion pancakes, then wiped the table clean with her own wet wipes. I sat reservedly, but soon the enthusiastic owner brought over the food. The plump, translucent wontons floated in a clear broth sprinkled with minced cilantro, and the scallion pancakes were fried to perfection, sizzling with oil. The food was delicious. The sound of neighboring diners chatting about work or studies mixed in, enjoying a rare moment of rest, at home, where eating was silent and sleeping undiscussed. The dining table was always quiet and solemn, but now, I found this lively atmosphere quite pleasant too. Enjoying tasty food made one happy, and discussing our thoughts with someone close, without the burden of meticulous etiquette or the strain of topic selection, felt really good. Just saying whatever came to mind was refreshing. Before leaving with my notebook, Diana told me I should talk more. I don't really like to talk, I replied softly. Is that so? But I think there's a difference between not liking to talk and wanting to say something but not knowing how. She waved at me and boarded the departing bus, returning to Diana's room to finish today's homework. I pondered her words anew when pulling out a new worksheet. Indeed, not wanting to talk and wanting but not knowing how to talk are different. One is about reluctance, the other about desire. Which one am I? People often praise me for being quiet and composed. But from another perspective, that could be seen as dull and uninteresting. When did I start becoming like this? I tried to recall my past, thinking back to the extracurricular classes I had attended. The first was ballet. My foster mother told me she had enrolled me in a ballet class starting that Saturday. After a month, during a session where I twisted my ankle due to improper posture, they immediately canceled the course. Then there was horseback riding, during my second class. I fell off the horse. It was dangerous, but I found it interesting. Unlike my foster father who held me like a fragile glass doll, his hands trembling, they stopped letting me continue with horse riding that day. I realized my father was frightened, so despite my fondness for it, I agreed to his decision. Later on, I took up flower arranging. I loved plants, but I found the meditative sitting tedious. The teacher told me it was part of cultivating one's moral character, but as a child, it just made me feel uncomfortable all over. After class, my stepmother would ask if I enjoyed it, and for the first time, I mustered the courage to tell her I did not. That course was subsequently cancelled, which made me very happy until one night, when I woke up for a drink and overheard my stepmother apologizing over the phone. The flower arranging teacher was a renowned figure, and she had gone to great lengths and spent a considerable amount of money to arrange these lessons for me because she knew I liked plants. I hid behind the door, listening to her apologize repeatedly, overwhelmed by a tide of guilt until I could hardly breathe. So later, when they sent me to learn piano and asked if I liked it, I said I did. They were very busy, incredibly busy, so busy that at one point, I didn't see my stepfather for a month. From a young age, everyone kept telling me to be obedient, sensible, and make my parents' lives easier, which I believed was only right. They were working so hard for my brother and me outside the home, and I felt I should manage my affairs well and not trouble them. I believed this was love, that they loved me. If they didn't love me, they wouldn't have put so much effort into nurturing me. They wanted to give me the best, using their far greater life experiences to judge what was best for me. I believed this was love, so I didn't want to disappoint them or fail to meet their expectations of love. I wanted to be a child worthy of praise. Thus, I accepted everything they gave me without complaint, opposition, or expression of my own desires. My biological parents were kind-hearted. They could be described in this way, where communication seemed a natural part of our family life. Perhaps that's why Diana was able to express her emotions and needs so precisely and fluently. My biological father was careful and had a great sense of humor, traits Diana shared with him. Every day after work, he would bring me a small gift, sometimes the last daisy from the flower shop, sometimes a smooth, beautifully patterned pebble he found in the park, or a four-leaf clover he spotted in a roadside flower bed. My biological mother, as Diana described, loved novels and TV dramas, laughing heartily at the variety shows popular among the youth, although not highly educated. She loved reading, her volume of reading astonishing, and Diana likely inherited her love for books from her. When I was young and my stepmother was not yet very busy, I would wait with a fairy tale book for her to come and read to me every night. As my stepfather's business grew and she began coming home late, I had to imagine how she would voice the opinion written on the pages. Now, sitting at a small table under a dim lamp, listening to my biological mother vividly narrate classical literature, felt like collecting and cherishing fragmented moments of my childhood, glowing in the box of memory. This time wasn't long, but it was enough for me to fully understand how much Diana cherished such a life. It was her treasure, something she wouldn't trade for anything. If I had grown up in such an environment, I surely wouldn't have wanted to either. 2 weeks into the exchange student stay, Diana often invited me out. She took me to botanical gardens, played board games, and we swapped our ice creams at a street vendor. Surrounded by the lively chirping of cicadas, I took her to art exhibitions, visited shops specializing in ancient book restoration, and shared a tub of popcorn in the cinema. We were like the most ordinary friends, like the most ordinary sisters. At the beginning of the third week, my foster parents threw a party to celebrate Diana's return. I knew what they meant. The news of the Duncan family's child mix-up had spread among my foster parents' business partners. The party invited many people to clarify the situation to everyone, confirming the truth, and the Duncan family had already found their daughter. The second reason was to introduce Diana to those uncles and aunts who might become her connections in the future, whether or not she chose to return to the Duncan family later. Seeing how much the Duncan couple valued Diana would likely make everyone show her kindness. This would make her future path in life much smoother. I think it's a great arrangement, and it's good for Diana, but looking at the electronic invitation on my phone, I'm unsure what to do. Lucas made a point to call me, telling me to relax and attend, saying that even though I'm not related by blood, I'm still part of the Duncan family. However, I'm worried that my presence might embarrass my foster parents and Diana. What's there to be embarrassed about? Lucas seemed busy and stressed on the phone but still responded seriously, "You're going home, and that's perfectly natural." I'm still hesitant, but it seems like I don't really have another choice. On the day of the party, 2 hours before it starts, Uncle Lee drives down to the Fong family's building to pick me up, and I end up in the car, unable to refuse, at the villa. Preparations for the party are underway, and I'm whisked into a dressing room by an aunt. A makeup artist immediately starts working on my makeup and changing my clothes, just like at every party before. "Where's Diana?" I realized I hadn't seen her. "She's with your parents, chatting with the guests who arrived early." I nodded, letting the soft brush sweep across my cheeks. The party was as usual, and I saw some familiar faces. I used to greet them actively as the daughter of the Duncan family, with a practiced smile, asking everyone to enjoy the evening, but this time, I didn't want to do that. I looked for Diana among the guests and finally found her in a corner of the buffet table, stuffing chocolate Mont Blanc into her mouth. I managed a polite smile for the guests who came to greet me. They looked at me with evaluative eyes, seemingly assessing my current worth. I saw it all clearly but had to maintain my smile as if unaware. Eventually, when no more guests approached me, I quietly moved to Diana's side. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, as if seeing a savior. "You finally came." She didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with my being there, as if it was natural for me to be here. I carefully stood next to her. She was wearing a simple light blue tie-back dress that flattered her slender waist and long legs. "Do you often have these kinds of parties?" she whispered to me. I thought for a moment. "Not very often, once or twice a month. More during the holidays." That already sounds terrifying. Diana leaned in a bit closer. "This dress feels like a shell. It's so tight I can barely breathe, and something is really chafing. Let's go to the restroom, I'll help you adjust it." So, the star of the party pulled me sneakily up to the second-floor restroom. I locked the door, and Diana turned her back to me. I checked her dress, untying and readying the laces. "Is that better?" "I can breathe now," she exhaled. "What was so hard just now?" I showed her my palm. There was a small pin left in it. "I'm starting to miss my t-shirts and hoodies. Shall we go down?" I watched as she took off her high heels and stood barefoot on the floor. Staying down there is too much for me mentally. So many uncles and aunts come up to greet me, and I don't know any of them. Was it the same for you? Pretty much. That must be exhausting. It is. But you get used to it. As the host, I couldn't leave. And as a guest, I couldn't just leave without greeting others. She sighed. "I don't really like the way they talk." "What happened?" "They called me the true daughter of the Duncan family," which was really just a form of polite flattery. I knew those were just pleasantries meant to make people happy, but I just didn't like the phrase, true daughter. She bent down to touch the wound on the back of her ankle, caused by her high heels. "Why do we need to define a person with terms like real or fake? It sounds like you're denying my entire life and identity for the past 17 years. We aren't antiques or luxury goods that come with fakes." Her words were like a breeze that instantly scattered the dark clouds that had gathered in my heart, letting in clear, bright light. She articulated the confusion and inexplicable gloom in my heart so clearly. Yes, 17 years might not seem long in a lifetime, but for us right now, it's everything. She takes pride in her parents, has dreams she loves. I have time spent with my family, those precious memories and warmth. It seemed as if overnight all these things turned false, needing to be corrected. So, I kicked off my high heels too and sat barefoot on the wash basin counter with her. "You'll definitely become a great writer someday," I told her. And you, a great botanist? She asked with a smile. I shook my head. If we don't switch back, I plan to study business or foreign languages to help manage my brother's company. Didn't you say you wanted to study botany abroad? That was a dream. Dreams and reality always weigh against each other in the scales of life. Dreams can be pure, but reality always comes with countless extras, making the scale wobble until the side with the dreams is as light as a feather. I thought everyone was like me, but Diana wasn't. I never saw a hint of hesitation in her pursuit of dreams. Do you think I'm being too pragmatic? I asked her. Is being pragmatic bad? She countered. It's a decision you've made after careful consideration. As long as you're committed, I think it's fine. We sat in the bathroom chatting away, the air filled with the scent of essential oils, with only the faint sound of water around us, as if the bustling noise outside had nothing to do with us. Diana told me that the guests my foster parents introduced her to were from a publishing house, looking to invest in her novel. That's great. I genuinely felt happy for her but noticed her expression wasn't very thrilled, which gradually dimmed my initial enthusiasm. Aren't you happy? It's complicated. I am happy, but it feels like I've taken an unfair shortcut, and I feel a bit guilty. I thought about it and asked her a question. Do you think I'm a hardworking person? Of course. She replied instantly, without a second thought. I heard from your aunt that you're in the top 10 of your class. You practice piano 2 hours a day, and even hosted your own concert, right? And you spend your other time cultivating roses in the greenhouse. Who says you don't work hard? I'd challenge them. But I've also received a lot of help. You know, the concert was funded by the Duncan family. Just the venue rental, costume expenses, staff fees, and various other costs added up to 200,000. If it weren't for growing plants, I would never have known how expensive seeds and soil can be, and some rare plants can't even be bought with money. I whispered to her, knowing that to some these might seem like the boasts of someone privileged, but I trusted that Diana would understand what I was truly trying to convey. At first, I felt quite embarrassed. But later Lucas told me that everyone has different family circumstances and access to different resources. Since we have more, we should be more humble and work even harder to deserve what we have received. People from poorer families might envy those who are well off. Families who have just enough often envy those who are wealthy, and that's just human nature. Living in abundance is a rare fortune, and if you're lucky enough to have it, you should accept it with gratitude and strive to become someone worthy of that fortune. That's my belief and the reason I strive. I hope Diana can find some comfort in these words, even if they're a bit clumsy. But I think it's also okay for you to refuse the help from the Duncan family. You have your own reasons and efforts, as long as it's your decision. I told her with a smile, echoing the words she had given me. I think that's good too. After I finished speaking, she looked at me with a gaze that was curious, admiring, and bright, which made me a bit embarrassed. What's up? I asked her why she was looking at me like that. See, didn't you speak very well? She replied. Only then did I realize I had said a lot, and, feeling my ears heat up, I averted my gaze. Diana took my hand. I'll think it over carefully, she said. After the party, I returned to the Fong family and resumed my usual life. The next afternoon, while I was working on a math problem left by my tutor, I received a message from Lucas. Lucas, Diana had an argument with her parents. I was startled and quickly sent a message asking what happened, but without a prompt reply, I decided to call him directly. Lucas answered the phone, and I hurriedly asked what had happened. From Lucas's response, I learned the details and breathed a sigh of relief. Strictly speaking, it wasn't an argument. Diana had sat down with my foster parents to talk about the party. She expressed her gratitude for their intentions and understood the purpose of the party, but she disliked the sudden notification and felt that being involved, she should have the right to know and decide. This kind of situation was common in the Fong family, as I could tell from how my foster parents treated me. But from my previous family, Lucas and I were used to accepting a busy schedule, so to him, it probably seemed like an argument. What was the attitude of Mom and Dad? I meant my foster parents. Lucas thought for a moment. They were a bit surprised, but didn't seem angry. Lucas briefly repeated their conversation. My foster parents seemed to emphasize their good intentions, while Diana responded calmly. I know I'm young and my views on things are not yet mature, but I still want you to know that I'm trying to think and judge for myself. And I'm prepared to face the consequences of my choices, no matter how hard or painful they may be in the future. Diana had told them. Listening to Lucas mimic Diana's way of speaking so accurately, I couldn't help but laugh. What do you think? I asked Lucas. What do I think? He paused for a few seconds. I think this girl is pretty impressive, like Dad, indeed. She resembled him in her reckless ambition and determination, and her fearless attitude when facing authority. Finally, Lucas and I agreed to meet up that evening to unwind. At 8 o'clock, I said goodbye to my parents and went to the park where Lucas and I used to play as children. The night breeze was gentle, the willows by the lake swayed, and the summer riverside was lit with brilliant neon lights, stretching our shadows on the ground and casting them into the shimmering waters. How have things been these days? Lucas asked me. Pretty good. My biological parents are very kind people. I shared some of the everyday life I experienced at the Fong household with Lucas. Suddenly, Lucas adopted an expression as if he were facing a great enemy. You're not planning to just stay with your biological parents, are you? Do you really distrust me that much? Lucas hesitated for a moment. If you think it's better over there, you can go. What matters most is your happiness. If that's the case, all your chocolate puddings are mine from now on. I pretended to hit him, and he dodged with a laugh. We played around by the riverside for a while before sitting down on a bench to rest. I pulled out some mosquito repellent from my bag and handed it to him. Lucas took it and sprayed a generous amount on his exposed skin. Hey, I have something to tell you. Kevin is coming back next week. He's coming back too. With such a major event as his fiancée changing, it wouldn't be right if he didn't come back. Kevin Smith is the only child of the Smith family, 2 years older than me, currently studying in another city. We were childhood sweethearts, our mothers being close friends, and we grew up together. Our families arranged our engagement when we were 12, though it didn't feel real at that age. Does Diana know? She doesn't even know that she might have an extra fiancé. Think about how you'll break it to her. Should I be the one to tell her? I imagined Diana's expression, and it didn't seem like it would be a pretty sight. How about I organize a dinner? I'll bring Kevin, and you bring Diana. It might be better to discuss it with both families first. My parents said that we should handle it ourselves, and they'll deal with Kevin's parents. I nodded, then suddenly realized something. Brother, be honest with me. Are you handing this over to me because you're afraid to tell Diana yourself? Lucas guiltily shifted his gaze away. What's there to be afraid of? Just show the same authority you have at the company. Last time I went to deliver documents, I even heard a staff member say you're like a domineering CEO from a novel, who has such good taste. I'll give them a raise and promotion. If flattery gets a promotion, you're a deluded boss. We bickered as usual, strolling casually under the early evening lights. Late at night, Lucas drove me back to the Fong family home. After organizing my thoughts for a long time, I finally sent Diana the full story about Kevin. The chat showed, typing for a solid half hour on her end, and finally, Diana replied with just one word. Diana's text, ? The meeting was set for the day after Kevin returned. Lucas booked a private room in a 5-star hotel. The meal was somewhat tasteless for the 4 of us, with Diana's awkwardness nearly spilling over. While Kevin chatted with Lucas, she secretly sent me a message with an emoji of fainting. Diana had no interest in Kevin at all. In previous conversations, she had mentioned her ideal type was a mature man with a gentle demeanor and scholarly air, which was the exact opposite of Kevin. After the meal, as the waiter cleared the dishes and brewed tea, Lucas went to explain the relationship and business cooperation between the Duncan and Smith families to Diana, while Kevin awkwardly approached me. Yami, I have a favor to ask. If it's for Diana's contact information, forget it. Having known him for so long, just by looking at his face, I could guess what he was about to say and cut him off. Don't be so heartless. I swear it's just for a chat. Kevin, even a rabbit doesn't eat the grass near its burrow. Kevin pointed at himself. Don't I count as grass near your burrow? He managed to render me speechless. Then ask her yourself. If you like her, be straightforward about it. Don't go through me. Taking a deep breath, Kevin stepped forward with his phone to strike up a conversation with Diana, and the 2 of them talked about something I couldn't hear. After a while, Kevin came back looking crestfallen. What did Diana say? She flat out rejected me, saying, a rabbit doesn't eat the grass by its burrow. I joked that you 2 must actually be sisters, maybe twins that your uncle and aunt had. I couldn't help but laugh until my eyes crinkled. Are you really laughing? I've been chased for years because of this engagement. Never even dated, and here I am, heartbroken in 3 seconds. Can't you show a little sympathy and brotherly love? Kevin couldn't help but rebuke me for taking pleasure in his pain. Aren't I in the same boat? I've never dated either, I responded assertively. Then something struck me. Do you not like this engagement? Kevin was taken aback by my question, scratched his head, sighed heavily as if he had been psyching himself up before he finally spoke. I'll be honest, Yami, don't be mad. I think you're a great person, beautiful, good-natured, talented, and academically excellent. Get to the point. All right, the point is, I really just see you as a sister. How old were we when we got engaged? You were 12 and I was 14. What did we know? We were clueless throughout the entire ceremony. He pointed at himself, not to mention, just look at my face. Could you feel even a bit of romantic love? Not really, I answered him very straightforwardly. You could have put it more tactfully, you know, that, I cannot do. Watching Kevin's dejected expression, I couldn't help but laugh. In truth, Kevin was not at all unattractive, even handsome in his own right, but having known him so well and for so long, the thought of marrying him felt almost incestuous. So what's your plan? I asked him softly. What can I do? I could go home and fight with my dad to drop the idea. Can you do the same? Just me calling off the engagement seems terribly unfair. I couldn't do that. An idea struck me. What if I convince my parents, and you convince yours? Would that work? Kevin looked at me, hope lighting up his eyes. I can try. Kevin immediately grabbed my hand. It's all on you then. Whether we can escape this arranged marriage and enjoy free love depends on you. For some reason, I suddenly felt Kevin could probably get along well with Diana. Looking at his earnest expression, I nodded, standing outside the study, my fingers clenched and unclenched with nervousness. Lucas patted my shoulder from behind. Why not go in? Your parents are already inside. That day, after meeting with Kevin, I summoned the courage from somewhere to call my foster parents, hoping to discuss the engagement with the Smith family. Perhaps because of my formal tone, my foster father was a bit surprised, but he didn't dismiss my request as child's play. He told me he needed to talk it over with my mother and then scheduled a meeting for the next afternoon at 2 in the study. The study was a shared space for my parents, sometimes used for private meetings due to its confidentiality. My foster father asking me to discuss things there made me feel valued but also added to my nervousness. Diana was peeking around nearby, looking even more nervous than me. Our eyes met, and she gave me an encouraging gesture, which helped me calm down a bit. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door of the study. Diana did not participate in this conversation. Before this, she had told me, arm in arm, that she believed I could handle this situation well. This is your issue, Yami, you can do it. Yes, I was the one who was engaged to Kevin, and I also hoped to break it off. Kevin had already faced what he needed to. Now it was my turn. My adoptive parents sat behind the tea table looking at me as I tried to appear calm and collected. Settling myself across from them, the air was filled with the scent of osmanthus fragrance. Breathing in the familiar aroma, I pondered where to begin this conversation. Lucas sat next to me, his hand resting on the back of mine, his palms slightly warmer than usual, as if to provide me with support and courage. Looking into their eyes, I suddenly felt that I was being overly cautious. These were my parents, and although we weren't related by blood, we had lived together for 17 years. I knew what kind of people they were, and they knew me. All I needed was to speak my mind honestly and openly. So, I raised my head and said what needed to be said. Mom, Dad, I've already talked with Kevin, and we both wish to call off our engagement. My adoptive parents showed no particular reaction. They remained silent for a while. During the continued conversation, they came to understand my point of view, and I theirs. Matching social and economic statuses might sound like an antiquated marriage tradition, but it can't be denied that there's some logic to it. When both parties are of similar social, political, and economic standing, it's likely that they share more common values and find it easier to understand each other. I admit that love is a beautiful emotion that can overcome all barriers. After all, I'm only 17 years old, and it's undeniable that I harbor idealistic notions about pure love. However, I must also acknowledge the concerns of my parents. Thus, they chose Kevin for me, a boy they had known since childhood, someone whose background and family they trusted completely. They believed that a child raised in such a family couldn't go wrong. Kevin's behavior never disappointed them. He was somewhat childish and youthful, not overly mature, but serious when it mattered and had his own principles. If I married Kevin, our future life might not be smooth sailing, but at least as a couple, we would respect each other. Moreover, Aunt Smith liked me very much, so I wouldn't have to worry about mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationships. My parents had considered everything for me, yet they had forgotten to consider what I truly wanted. This made me feel both warm and a bit regretful. I told them that I couldn't promise that if I chose to love freely, I would choose a man who was kind and upright. Humans are complex creatures, and I wasn't overly confident in my own judgment. But I hoped they would give me a chance to learn from my mistakes. As Diana once said, I have tried to think and judge for myself the path I should take, even if it might be very hard or even painful in the future. I was prepared to face the consequences of my choices. This would be my own life, my own path. I know there may not be anyone else in the world who loves me as much as you do, always considering everything for me. But I promise you, I will give my all to think about my future life. I will strive, I will improve, and I will cherish myself just as you cherish me. As I spoke, my heart pounded, unsure if it was from nervousness or excitement. I kept eye contact with them throughout, hoping my feelings would come across, and then I succeeded. My adoptive father told me he would handle the situation. It was their families who had arranged this marriage without consulting us, and now it was up to them to end it. The moment of joy came almost belatedly. My first reaction was to worry about whether calling off the engagement would affect the relationship between our families, or the profits of the company. My adoptive mother glanced at me with a hint of teasing. We haven't fallen so low as to need to make money by selling our children. I smiled sheepishly, and Lucas quietly gave me a thumbs up. Before leaving the study, my adoptive mother called out to me, "Yami, wait." I turned back to look at her. She casually brushed my bangs aside as she spoke in an even tone. "Next week the weather will change. Take some coats from home." I nodded subconsciously, feeling that there was more she wanted to say, and indeed, after she finished advising me, her gaze lingered on me tenderly for a moment before she added, "You've grown up." I was momentarily stunned, unsure of how to respond. Her words seemed like a simple statement, yet also like the recognition I had longed for. My engagement with Kevin was indeed called off, and it all happened so smoothly that I felt a bit dazed. I had thought it would be a tough battle, but the ending was unexpectedly understated. I shared my thoughts with Lucas, who was leisurely pouring himself a glass of single malt whiskey and poured me a glass of orange juice. "Yami, do you know what the biggest thing I've felt since starting work is?" "What?" "It's that the things I found agonizing and painful as a student seem trivial to adults." Lucas sat down across from me and shared something I never knew. In his freshman year, he was scammed out of $20,000, a significant amount for a student. At the time, he was panicking, feeling he had made an unforgivable mistake, and almost considered a desperate loan. I almost spit out my orange juice in disbelief. He waved his hand sheepishly. "Sounds stupid, right? I think so too, now. So what did you do eventually?" "I had no choice. My living expenses were gone. So I told my parents." He took a sip of his whiskey. "After they scolded me, they taught me a lesson and then transferred the money to me. It was that simple." It's like how we felt devastated scoring 60 in a test in elementary school, which now seems trivial, just a minor setback in an exam, but to our younger selves, it was terrifying. "So," I asked Lucas softly, sensing he was trying to convey something, but I wanted to hear it from him. "What I mean is," he tapped my forehead lightly, "it's okay to worry, it's okay to agonize. Every age has its troubles, and no troubles are lesser or greater than others. But remember, your parents and family, they have more life and social experience, and they are always ready to help you." Time passed like flowing water, and the 2 months of exchange felt neither long nor short. But today was finally the last day. Diana and I both chose to return to our original lives. Our biological parents drove to take me back to the Duncan family while they were also ready to welcome Diana back home. Diana had packed all her belongings, and the moment she saw her parents, she joyfully ran to them, embracing her family. Watching their reunion filled me with warmth. My family was waiting not far away, and I walked towards them with my luggage, as if returning from a long journey. Lucas was the first to come up and help with my bags. "Welcome home, Yami." Standing in front of my parents, who had raised me for 17 years, I suddenly felt I should do something, so I reached out and hugged their necks. "Mom, Dad, I'm back." I could feel they were a bit stiff in my embrace, as such displays of affection were not common in our home, but they didn't push me away, after a few seconds. Their arms also wrapped around me. It's good to have you back. Hearing them say this, I felt a profound sense of belonging and relief. Then I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth from my parents. Yes, I was home. This was me, the home and life we chose. Regardless of good or bad, true or false, life returned to its usual tranquility. Diana and I worked hard on our respective dreams. Senior year was intense and busy, providing us few chances to chat, but I never felt distant from her. We encouraged each other, communicated, and wished each other well, eventually achieving the outcomes we desired. After much reflection, I finally got into my preferred university, majoring in plant science and technology, while Diana, through her own efforts, secured an opportunity to study abroad. In the end, she refused her father's help, wanting to try on her own first, even if it meant facing severe challenges. This was very much her style. She was preparing to study drama overseas, to bring her story to the stage and onto the screen. Originally, I had wanted to study abroad, but it turned out to be Diana. We gathered and laughed about it for a long time, but we both felt completely satisfied with our lives now. On the day of her departure, I, along with others, went to the airport to see her off, watching her carrying her bags. Her face was filled with anticipation and excitement. Kevin sighed beside me. Can't you just speak your mind? I couldn't hold back any longer. Kevin sighed. Am I really destined to be without Diana? I couldn't help but glance at him. Do you genuinely like Diana? He swore with his finger. Love at first sight, truly and deeply. So cheesy. Then why don't you make one last effort? I pointed towards her as Diana was saying goodbye to her parents. No. Kevin looked at Diana and shyly averted his gaze. She has her own dreams to pursue, and if I really like her, I shouldn't make things harder for her. Seeing that Kevin had convinced himself, I didn't persuade him further. Although he wasn't Diana's type, he was a good person. The future is long, and no one knows what might happen. After saying goodbye to her parents, Diana walked over to me with a smile and pinched my cheek. Come on, don't look so glum. I'm just going to learn for a few years, pick up all their creative techniques, and then I'll be back. It won't be long, I know. I wrapped my arms around her neck, hugged her, and whispered in a voice only the two of us could hear, Diana, you know, I'm really grateful you came into my life. Then I let go of her. She paused, and touched her nose. That's kinda cheesy. I laughed and gently pushed her, urging her to board her plane. Just before leaving, she suddenly hugged me again and whispered in my ear, Yummy, I feel the same way. Side story. Before Diana left, she gave me a book, her favorite work. On the title page, she had handwritten a message for me. May you always follow the path you choose, never looking back. Our friendship and relationship began with an accident, a mistake. In that era, truth and falsehood were arbitrarily decided for us. But as she said, we are not objects or things. We are people, living, breathing, flesh and blood people. We live, we laugh, we cry, we meet others, and we each have our own lives and dreams. This is an undeniable truth that cannot be erased. We are human, so we can make our own choices and judgments, and choose the life we want. May we all walk our chosen, true paths, never looking back. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.